the link for the meeting?
It's right here. Hang on.
Or is it on our phones?
Yeah, feedback, man.
Guys, to the public, how they can join.
Yeah, it was in the Tribune today, and then Tim posted it on Facebook and Twitter.
Okay.
Brooke, are you guys meeting at TCTC or are you doing
We were
everything
not included. It was done 2 days ago.
just virtually though?
Nope.
Or?
They let individually walk through and collect their certificate.
No, I'm sorry. The board meeting.
Oh, yeah, no, that's been virtual for twice now. Mhm.
Mr. Fairfield?
You guys use the Zoom?
Yes. No, Google Meet.
Muted, Ted.
I'm going to send you the link to the YouTube feed.
Put that on Facebook.
And I don't know if you want to tweet it out, whatever you want to do. What do you think, Mr. Dre?
We were not included.
I'd say both ways if you can.
Facebook and Twitter.
They let individually walk through and collect their certificate.
No, I'm sorry. The board meeting.
Oh, yeah, no, that's been virtual for twice now.
They haven't made a decision on fair yet.
No, they had a huge meeting last night. No, May 21st. Is it on?
And I don't know if you want to tweet it out, whatever you
The meeting ID on here.
Oh. I'm really
I'm
sorry.
not seeing it.
All right. Also, folks, as I told Mr. Dre and Mr. Nero that in case there's any kind of naughty bits on the screen or anything fun like that, I'm going to pull the plug on the meeting real fast. Okay. So I don't know if you heard what happened at Brecksville, but they were Zoom bombed and they had some explicit pictures of child pornography on the screen during the board meeting. It was the last question of all things too. It was almost done and they did that. So if that does happen, I'm just going to kill it. So, but I have it so everybody's cameras should be muted and there'll be the raised hand function, so do you want me to unmute them when they raise their hand, Chris?
Yeah, that's.
Just kind of communicate with Chris. Just don't unmute him, just so we're aware somebody else will be talking.
Okay.
We like one at a time, obviously.
The password more impacts for the meeting.
You do 684850.
It won't.
How's it now?
It's good.
Everything moved.
We were moved. Not all our stuff is moved, but everything we need. Right. Thanks.
I just figured out it's easy.
Unmute already.
What's that?
Does anybody know who Amber Willis is?
Yes.
Okay.
She's a parent of a senior.
Oh, okay.
That's really the picture, Ted? Wow. The YouTube.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
What's that?
It's posted.
Thank you, sir.
They can't hear us on Facebook.
I don't know.
So my friend had twisted.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
What's it doing? It just says, please wait. Yes. Like that's what I'm trying to. Oh my God.
I'll give you the lowercase.
I think what we'll do though, Mark, any discussion graduating with it, I think we can just tell them now or whatever we decide to do. I don't suggest.
Right.
I think we got a plan. We're gonna. Tim's plan is basically good as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, exactly.
So the health department strongly encourages us not to. And my recommendation is no, they can put their head out the window. And I'm only speaking because when I went to deliver yard signs, I came up here and most of our seniors with blankets around them, their cars parked right there, just kind of hanging out. So I would foresee that.
Them getting out and throwing their, and I mean,
The alternative is they
come in here one at a time like Champion did, and that just wouldn't.
This is going to be a little more special.
I agree. Yeah.
I think that's why it's kind of important that we have some sort of security.
Well, I
So
talked
parents
to,
don't go nuts and try to put it together.
yeah, I talked to Mike and Ty about hiring a sheriff's deputy to be at that end. I think maybe we might need two of them. I mean, one at each end, and then the sheriff's deputy is going to be the parade, the base parade afterwards. We've got them hired, they can do that, they can be
Now, how are you going to park people?
in the order that they would go up on stage as far as, so the valedictorians, the Victorians class officer, and then, that order. The only thing that I'm going to send home if this all gets approved is it's just us now. Ted took the other person into the lobby and wait until the meeting starts. But like Jill Church had mentioned something about, well, if she's got a Suburban and she can put 7 people in it.
And
but if Matt's one of the valedictorians and
there's a Suburban park there, the people behind him are not going to be able to see.
I was going to encourage those parents that have a vehicle that we may park you in the back. So
Well, the other question that came up with divorce there.
So
Allow 2 cars for that.
well, and that second car will be parked in the back. It wouldn't be with it because in the parade we're only going to have the graduate and whoever's in their car in the parade. I wouldn't encourage other people because people want to see the graduates. They don't want to see their parents
in the parade.
So we would, the second car, if you had a second car, my proposal is the second car be behind. Not the very back row, but all of the graduates, the 51 graduates cars, and then, for those
families, the additional car.
So we do 51, not 49.
we have 51, and both of those girls will move it out.
Cool.
So,
Great.
so no one is not graduating.
Will you put a mandate on the amount of cars? Is it just 2?
What's that?
Like blended cars, you have additional in the
That's
back?
it. Yeah, you get 1 extra car if you have a divorced.
Okay, so the graduate's vehicle plus 1 extra, so at any time you shouldn't have more than 2 cars.
No,
We shouldn't have anywhere near 102 cars because there's a very limited number of graduates that have divorced
parents. So
What about,
that second car isn't for grandparents.
where will the parade go? Like, so,
So the parade's not mine. I've got nothing to do for free. That's base.
That's base after.
The only thing base wanted to, I should mute myself. Ted, can you mute me? Okay, never mind.
They were baffled to me as they complain about coming to graduate, but not getting to come to this.
And Brooke, I'll tell you, I would guess we won't have all 50. Because there are people that want to walk anyway, and it's clear, so few, but I think Christine, how it is now, I would get a lot from it. So, I'd say make it plain that we're gonna. And we're limited to the parents. So I even told the teacher. Because how can I tell a grandparent that you can't come on graduate, but get free?
Unless they can pack them into one car they've got, right?
Well, I told them, if this, but if the board approves this and the direction that we go, well, we're gonna publish, basically gonna publish. Because with the graduation and the parade,
Hey, Ted, Christina's trying to get in. It's still loading. Yeah, it's not, I don't know why it's not coming up.
so they'll walk. They actually will have to be out beyond the
Wait a minute. I thought the plan was underneath the
I don't see her.
roof out here.
You know, it's still loading. I mean,
All right,
up closer to the park.
all right. The weather is supposed to be good.
so there's a pop-up that says board meeting host will let you in soon. So I mean that screen's showing.
Yeah, I don't see it yet.
Are we talking about that?
Maybe it's updating. I just have Amber Willis and Matthew waiting.
And if it does, Tim, you handle those questions. It's your plan, okay? Except don't paint us into a corner because we're going to discuss it some more anyway. Basically, graduation is going to be the regular day. It's going to be in the parking lot. Right. Right.
Wait, was she Matthew?
No.
Was Christina Matthew?
Oh, you might have been Matthew. That's why.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she would have been Matthew. I updated the.
That's fine. I already
She had to update the app anyways.
Yeah, that's good.
Thanks, Ted.
So basically, all we need to do
So try to log in
is
again.
during the public participation.
still.
Mario,
Talk to people,
Yeah.
right?
is Misty there?
Yeah, Misty's there.
Is she muting herself?
She's muting. Yeah, she's muting and took the video off. She doesn't want
Okay,
people
very
seeing her.
All right.
We're just talking about graduation. I said, especially if it comes up during public participation.
Yeah, she turned it up. She doesn't want people to see her right now. Just kidding. Oh, really? Beginning of next year already. Who's Amber Willis? Here's Amber Willis. Oh, graduate. Yeah. Where are you at?
Yeah, the only issue I see with that is, like, let's say you're kindergarten teacher, you have
Jim, go back to the.
how you can't keep them apart in the classroom.
No, I think that.
That sounds like a train wreck to me. I don't know.
I almost think you should just, and again, parents, I almost think you just, maybe you split the class in half, because you get 2 days. Or one on the rest of the time, the others get 2 days. Oh, it is? I don't disagree.
Yeah, at least though, with that being 7 to 12, we're completely more independent. Like my children would fall under 7, 12, I should leave them home and stuff. Now, if I had K through 6, like, then I would leave the school. I think that would be received better by the public than 2 days on, 2 days off. Especially with your smaller kids, just because they don't.
But what are you saying, do with the smaller kids?
I'm saying like Twinsburg, I think that's really actually smart, like 7, 12, be totally homeschooled, and K6 be spread around the school. And then reallocate your teaching staff. Those that are certified to teach younger grades, allocate them to the younger grades. It would take, I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
I was gonna say, because I don't know, I just don't know that we have enough staff to.
I don't even see that flying. What
Because they
what's the
want-
union gonna say about that? You know,
It's either,
yeah, they are, but you know how that's gonna work.
It just makes me wonder if they have like a lot of extra staff.
I don't know, I know Alliance where I'm employed, they're considering.
Hey Ted, how did she change her name?
And actually the company
From Matthew.
is considering tying us into homeschool nurses. So that we would have to go to the house.
You're muted, Ted. I can't hear you.
They're approved to have nursing at school, and that becomes their school environment.
You got it. She got it.
For me, that would be awful.
I was gonna say I could do it.
The way things are
Oh,
moving
you can
right
do it.
now, and they're moving way too fast. But I don't really know.
She said
Where's
she's
you want me to name her?
doing it. Don't touch. She said.
Oh, she got it.
They better be, but
You want to do the video?
but look at the TV,
Bottom
they're
left.
not.
You have to just move your mouse over there. It'll come up. It'll be there. You should be able to mute and unmute.
Green light for the fair?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm like, this is insanity.
There she is.
Gonna be.
We're talking about it now.
Nice work. Nice work, Matthew.
It's like a solid draft.
Matthew wouldn't have that trouble, Ted.
But some of these things take, like they wanted their teachers to get the building emptied so that if they do that, they had to have everything out today. Personal items.
I mean, that's an interesting thought.
Our person left the waiting room. It looks like.
I just don't, again, I could see you could split it, like say split it kindergarten classes, but I don't think you have enough funds. Just don't know how that would work. Because the high school people are kind of taking care of it. So if you have the same amount of teachers we have in the whole classroom, what would you do if you split it in half and you put, one in this room, one in this other?
Well, the number I keep hearing is 15, so they wouldn't necessarily need split in half. But
But how do you keep those kids apart then, too? It's just, wait. Little kids aren't gonna. they don't
No.
know.
but no matter what, even if there's, like, it doesn't matter if you come every other day, you're still,
Well, I agree. I don't think there's a cure, one or the other.
No, it's gonna be a challenge either way. Let's just hope things look better. Let's,
I'm just thinking like, you got title teachers, so there's somebody that has a room,
Mhm.
that's probably. And that's, and you've got a specialist teacher.
Mhm. There's actually, I think, a lot of teachers that could, like Mike Austin, he's one that's going up. Collins is one. I don't know. Who else? I thought of somebody else too.
But I'm just saying, like,
Craig?
Mike would have
Yeah.
school social studies,
or Nick.
high school, middle school.
Mhm. But if it's online, then
And our numbers for special education are through the roof right now. Shannon and I were talking about that today.
mhm.
Their caseloads are pretty big. We're actually,
Just like parents with little kids trying to figure out what to do with them 2 or 3 days a week is going to be a nightmare. They're already complaining about it.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
You know, the crazy thing, I went to my doctor's 2 weeks ago, he's over there by Ivy Hills, and there's that daycare, it was open 2 weeks ago.
They,
Every little kid's going in and out.
they have the pandemic license.
What does that mean? They're allowed to have a
Yep.
pandemic or what?
No, you're allowed to operate under a pandemic license. So they had to go through federal inspection to get approval to hold a license to open their doors. And then they have only 6 children per room. And the teachers had to go through like an
That must
online
not be widely
seminar.
known.
I think that it's extremely challenging to get.
Okay. Like to call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Mrs. Berry,
Here.
Mr. Chapman,
Here.
Mrs. Stevens, Andre,
Here.
Mr. Michael.
Here. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the minutes of March 11th, 2020 regular board meeting.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Chapman,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens,
Yes.
Mrs. Berry,
Yes.
Mrs. Andre,
Yes.
Mr. Michael.
Yes. Motion carried. Motion to financial reports presented by the treasurer.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Unless you have any questions, I'll discuss the forecast later.
Roll call.
Mrs. Berry,
Yes.
Mrs. Andre,
Yes.
Mr. Chapman,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Michael.
Yes. Motion carried. Superintendent's report.
Just a couple of things. I would like to say thank you to everyone. I got a lot of gifts as far as flowers and cards when my dad passed, so I really appreciate that from everyone on staff. You know, I had a student email me, so I thought that was really nice. I want to mention here real quick, just with you know, with all that's been going on for next year. Right now, the plan is we're not going to do a Trumbull County consortium commercial for next year. A lot of districts were concerned about that. We thought maybe it was something we should revisit in the future. You know, save some money for next year because of concerns about funding. Also, we didn't do a spring mailing. We'll still plan on trying to do something for the fall here. And then lastly, you know, with changes, our fall administrative conference, that's changed. That's all going to be virtual. So, you know, we don't really know what's going to happen for the future, but those are some of the plans already. And that's all I have.
Okay, committee reports. Christina?
I don't have anything from.
Is real bad. We could all mute while we're not speaking. The people watching are not able to hear us.
Okay. If Ted is still on, if he wants to give a technology update, maybe.
Hi. Recently, we had another of our meetings for our E-rate audit, and I think it went pretty well. We're looking for 8 bids to be documented. We gave them documentation within 2 hours, and so they said we were 95% done with that. I applied for E-rate for mobile hotspots for students to take home, and the time had passed so that we could use this E-rate funding before they approved the use of this funding for hotspots. So we're maybe looking into some other ways of paying for mobile hotspots for children that do not have internet access at home, maybe using the CARES Act. Also started talks with another company, maybe they're called Trinity 3, and they offer various plans for warranty service. So if we should want to get student devices for them to take home, it'd be a way to warrant them, and keep them running. So there's just some of the things we were looking at. That's it.
Okay. Scott?
Okay, so I don't have anything athletically wise, obviously. But from a financial point of view, I think Mario has done a great job. We'll get into more depth and details of that as we look at his forecast. But initially, you hear that there's going to be big cuts and stuff and you panic. But as you look at this and we look 3 and 4 years out, it doesn't look that doom and gloom. It's really, we're still going to be in the black. So I think what we have to do is ride the storm out and wait and see what's going to happen across the board and go from there. That's all I have.
Misty?
Extracurricular wise, I don't have anything.
Okay.
Oh, we're all muted.
Yeah, I know.
You should be able to on the bottom left, even on mute.
It
It's up right.
You cannot unmute
says,
yourself.
on video, you cannot unmute because you're not a host.
Hey, Ted, if you can hear us, everybody's muted. We just might have to spread out more. So we might have to spread out more if they're getting that signal.
Yeah, that might help.
When we did PCTC, we just independently muted ourselves and then unmuted when we were speaking. The host didn't do it.
I agree with that.
And that one.
Can we go to that, Ted, where we just mute and unmute ourselves when we want to talk?
I think I made it so you can't do that.
Yeah, for the public.
I did that to stop the public from commenting.
Well, I'm looking at our people in right now. I don't think anybody's going to bother if we just want to unmute it right now. I think everybody will be okay.
Scott, I think you might have to change your own. I'm clicking on unmute and it's not doing anything. Same with Christina.
Nope.
I did.
Mine was good. You're not unmuted either, Misty. I muted myself. Oh.
Yeah, I was going to mute myself too.
I did.
You know.
All right, I'm unmuted.
Okay. My committee is buildings and grounds, and we're not doing anything right now, so I don't have anything. I would like to welcome all visitors and invite public participation.
I have to do my committee report still, Dawn.
Okay.
For TCTC, they did do a walkthrough graduation this week. The top 5 were announced. Misty King from Bristol was in the top 5 of the 2020 graduating class for TCTC. They canceled all youth camps this year, and they said they'll reconvene for next summer to see what that looks like for youth camps going forward. They did honor the horticulture class by doing a plant giveaway. So the whole greenhouse was emptied out for board members and staff. And then on the Friday that they did that with a badge, all first responders were given a flat of flowers. So that was just a really nice token that they did for the community. And that's it. They're looking at all the same forecasts that we are and trying to wrap their head around all the changes. So that's it for me.
Ted, Mr. Mickle needs to be unmuted now.
All right, there we go. I would like to welcome all visitors and invite public participation. Does anybody have anything to bring before the board? I think, all right. Do we have anything under old business? New business? I need a motion to approve that during the emergency declared by Executive Order 2020-01D, issued on March 9, 2020, and not on December 1, 2020, the Board of Education shall call and conduct all regular, special, and emergency meetings in accordance with the provisions of the Open Meeting Act and Section 12 of the amended HB 197, further compliance with any further lawful and binding act or order of a state or federal government entity. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Berry? Mr. Chapman? Mrs. Stevens? Mrs. Von Drasek?
Yes.
Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried.
I think most of you guys were muted. Okay, could they hear me through? No, that's fine. Just want to make sure that they're.
Motion to approve resolution 2020-06. Authorize distance learning for days, hours, school buildings are closed to students for the 2019-2020 school year in compliance with the orders of the Ohio Director of Health.
I'll make the motion.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Von Drasek?
Yes.
Mrs. Berry?
Yes.
Mr. Chapman? Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve resolution 2020-07, board resolution regarding 2019-2020 evaluation.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Berry?
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Chapman? Mrs. Von Drasek?
Yes.
Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve resolution 2020-08, resolution to specify the Bristol local school district's intent not to provide career technical education to students enrolled in grades 7th and 8th for the 2020-2021 school year. Any discussion? Roll call.
So who got the first? Scott. Mr. Chapman?
Yes.
Mrs. Von Drasek?
Yes.
Mrs. Berry?
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve resolution 2020-09, a resolution to administer the third grade assessment only in a paper format beginning the 2020-2021 school year.
I'll make the motion.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Did you say something?
I was just gonna say, that's the assessment, the discussing it with some principals locally. Ms. Donatelli and some of the principals thought students would maybe do better with a paper reading test. So we're asked that we have to send it to the state, so that's not a guarantee. That's all I wanted to mention. That's what it sounded like, you know, because no year for the last so many years we've done it electronically, but
Roll call.
Mrs. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Berry? Mr. Chapman? Mrs. Von Drasek? Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve resolution 2020-10, resolution for the operation for schools during the period of emergency declared by Executive Order 2020-01D. Any discussion?
Yeah, the Auditor State had a webinar on April 28th, just talking about paying things during this pandemic, and that's what this resolution kind of addresses. So it's mostly for the auditors.
Roll call.
Mr. Chapman? Mrs. Von Drasek? Mrs. Berry? Mrs. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve the 5-year forecast as presented by the treasurer, 2020-04. Any discussion?
Yeah, I was just going to review some of the main points. The property tax line, the last 5 years, we averaged roughly a 95% collection rate. Kind of forecasting forward with everything that's going on, I projected roughly a 93% collection rate going forward. They also had I was also on a webinar the other day talking about these cuts. And one thing they mentioned is settlements may drop roughly 3 to 10% if you look back at the recession from 2009 to 2012. So kind of looking at the rest of this calendar year and even next year, if we have to make any adjustments to our collection rate, we will. And then the unrestricted line, before our foundations hit, the governor last week cut everybody's funding. It's roughly 3.7% average, but not everybody was cut 3.7%. They pretty much put people in groups based on wealth and where they get their state share index. And ours was roughly a 3% decrease, so we're actually below the average. But that accounted for roughly 113,000. We were not expecting that cut at the start of the year. We're expected to get the revenue we got last year, so that was kind of a surprise. And kind of looking into next year, they also talked on this webinar the other day to keep an eye on some schools are projecting as high as a 10%, another 10% increase as next year. I didn't feel comfortable doing that higher percentage right now. So I just did what they did this year, which is roughly 3%. So I had us getting another 3% cut next year. But a lot of it will depend on the state revenues and where they have to dip into. He has a rainy day fund right now, but they project the losses that the rainy day fund will even cover the losses right now. So it's a lot up in the air to what they expect funding to be next year. But if we need to, if we get more information, come our fall forecast, we have to make adjustments over the summer, we can do that. But my best estimate is to try to at least get another cut as we got this year and kind of going forward. The property tax allocation, that's just our homestead rollback. That's always been roughly around 14.8% of our property taxes. That's the state reimbursement for homestead and the rollback. And then our other revenue line, the last couple of years, we've been getting more money from for tuition from other school districts. That's roughly our core place kids and open enrolled for like special education. We've got a lot more money these last 2 years, but kind of going forward, I kind of looked at our fiscal year 18 amounts because we don't know where enrollment and how funding will be next year. That's where you see the decrease from this year to next year. And also interest income. So our interest rates took a big drop. I sent in my treasurer's note to you guys that our interest rate was around like 1.75%, and then within a month it's dropped below 1%. So that's all where the big increases are there, decreases are there. On the expenditure side, for salaries, we saw a little bit of a savings there, but some of the main things is we had a teacher that was on unpaid leave, so we had to save there. We also moved one teacher to federal grant, so that saved a portion of her salary. And also we had another subject where we had to sub out. So with a portion of those salaries, we saw savings in that, but also going into next year, we have to project those salaries. So that's where you kind of see the increase, but also we had 4 retirements. So that's why it wasn't as big of an increase as we were expecting, because we had 4 retirements going into next year. The big savings is our benefits line, which we negotiated last year with our extension. We had 25 employees that were on a family plan go to a lesser costly plan just based on the tier structure with the consortium. So that saved us a lot there. And then also we had 3 extra people going unpaid, opt out of insurance, which also was a saving. So those are just things to keep an eye on as we go forward, especially with the economy, as if employee spouses lose jobs or if people need to come on insurance, that'll be an added cost. But I kind of forecast where our current enrollment is, where we expect to be, and what plans people are, and kind of forecast that forward with roughly a 5% increase in insurance each year. About a couple years ago, we had an increase of 23.5% over an 18-month span. So that's why I kind of averaged out 20%, kind of going forward to spread out over the years. So that's where the percentage came from. Purchase service salary is roughly the same as last year. We just had that increase in the ESE contract because our special education numbers have increased. And also what we have to think about going next year, this will be our last year for utilities. Our maintenance levy will be coming off, or elementary building will be getting paid off. So we have a $500,000 maintenance levy that helps pay for utility costs. So it covers roughly 49,000 utility costs that will be coming onto the general fund costs. So we'll get roughly half of that next school year, and the following year we'll have roughly a 50% increase in utility costs. So that's where you see the big jump there. And supplies, we had a little bit of a savings there. Obviously with the fuel costs was our biggest savings because we didn't have transportation in the last 3 months, and kind of going forward, I kind of expected what we did the last few years. So unless you guys have any questions, those are the main points of the forecast.
Okay, roll call.
Mrs. Stevens? Mr. Chapman? Mrs. Berry? Mrs. Von Dracy? Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve the class of 2020 for graduation on May 22nd, 2020, provided they meet all state and local requirements. Any discussion?
We maybe have Tim discuss the plan a little bit. I'm gonna, Ted, can you unmute Tim?
Who needs unmuted?
Tim.
Mr. Dre and I discussed graduation. He asked me to come up with a proposal for the board. With most of the schools in Trumbull County going to some sort of virtual graduation ceremony. Our graduating class is 51 students. I'm pleased to report that all 51 of our students are going to be approved for graduation. We don't have anyone that wasn't on track. With that being said, I had proposed that we do a semi-drive-in graduation ceremony, a traditional in-person graduation ceremony in our elementary and student parking lot. I think the lot is big enough to accommodate that number of students and their parents. So what I'm proposing is that we hold our graduation on the date that it was originally scheduled for, which is the 22nd. I did look at May 29th as an alternative date should the weather become a problem. But the extended forecast right now shows Friday the 22nd as pretty favorable to an outdoor graduation ceremony. I was hoping to hold that at 6:00 p.m. The Bristol base, the Teachers Association, had proposed doing a parade of our graduates also that same night. So I thought it was logical to combine a graduation ceremony with the parade that base is going to organize. So I felt 6:00 would be a time when we can get the ceremony done and the parade done. So in my proposal, it's held in the staff lot adjacent to the elementary school. Graduates would be permitted to be in one vehicle with their parents. So it'd be graduates and their parents. We do have some families that have parents and step parents, and we could make accommodations for a second car for that situation on a case-by-case basis. Cars would be assigned a space based on graduation order. So typically our graduation ceremony, the valedictorians, salutatorians, class officers, and so forth parade in first, get their diplomas. So that's how the cars would be assigned. I talked to Mike Nelson, our school resource officer, and Ty Cada, sheriff's deputy in this area, about hiring a deputy or two to work that night. So that's being looked at as well too. And that deputy would ensure that the only people in our lot are the graduates and their parents in those cars. Unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to permit any other spectators or staff members in the lot during the ceremony. My proposal has it limited to myself and Mr. Mickle, the board president, with Mr. Mickle handing out diplomas and me doing the announcing of the student names. We are looking also at possibly contracting with a company to bring in an outdoor sound system so those names called could be heard pretty clearly. And then we would also have someone monitoring that system, so it wouldn't be one of our in-house people, be a professional with a wired microphone. Again, Mr. Mickle and myself would be on the stage separated by more than 6 feet. I talked to Mr. Pryor about setting up a stage in the front of the parking lot, and that stage would be a little smaller than the traditional graduation stage because we would only need the two of us on a podium on that stage.
Valedictorian, salutatorian speeches in my proposal are being recorded. I know Mrs. Suttles had spoke to the valedictorians and the salutatorians about their speeches. The majority of them did tell her that they're fine recording them. It could possibly be an option that those students could give their speeches. The only concern I have with that is number one, time. We're doing a graduation ceremony with 51 students who have to get out of cars and walk up onto a stage. And then they're doing a parade through the Bristol community. Even with a shortened parade, our teacher parade went 2.5 hours plus. So we want to try and keep the ceremony as short as possible, but still giving our students more than most of the typical schools in Trumbull County are getting. Under this proposal, our kids would actually get an in-person, face-to-face graduation when the whole class would be together. I would address the graduates briefly, and then we would call them up on stage one at a time. They'd exit their car, come up to the stage, get their diploma. No handshakes, just simply Mr. Mickle handing out the diploma. At that time, if a student was an award winner, they like a class award or valedictorian, they would also get the medal or the award that they would get for that award as well too. NJO Photography has that night reserved for us to take pictures of the ceremony. I have Coach Craig Geezy is going to assist in doing some video as well too, and hopefully splicing those pictures that NJO does and the video and the valedictorian, salutatorian speeches, something that we can put on our webpage and then put in a flash drive and give to each graduate. And then at the end, Mr. Dre, who would be off stage, would come up on the stage, certify the class. Students would have to kind of stick their head out the window and we would do the tassel, moving from left to the right or right to left. I know that's not what we traditionally do, but we did reach out to the health department and they informed us that having 51 graduates get out of their cars to change the tassel would again be against that mass gathering, 10 people maximum. And it could encourage those students to throw caps in the air and so forth and so on. So we're trying to limit that kind of thing. After that's done, then single file of students would parade out of the parking lot and then follow the base parade route. And grandparents, family members, friends, teachers would have the parade route in advance and be able to park along the parade route and cheer on the graduates. I would say that the graduate would probably not be the one driving, a parent would drive, so the graduate then can wave to the community as they go through. The parade route proposed would take them down into Farmington, back around, and then through Bristol and back up to the school again. A couple of items to consider before, I know I'm a little long-winded here, but one car per graduate is our limit with parents, unless it's a blended family that needs an additional car. And those additional cars would be then in the back of the lot instead of in the front. According to the health department, our students must remain in the car for the entire ceremony, with the exception of when the graduate receives their diploma. Cars would be assigned spaces. We would have sheriff's deputy and staff up here to assure that they're parked where they're supposed to be parked. Larger vehicles that would obstruct the view for other people behind them may be asked to be in the back instead of in the front. Valedictorians, again, there's a possibility that they could have the option to give their speech, but the only reserve I have about that is time and the fact that we're an outdoor sound system is as good as an outdoor sound system can get. It's just, it doesn't sound great. And then extended family members and friends, again, parking along the parade route to cheer the graduates on. So that was the proposal I gave to Mr. Dre to forward to the board. So that is what it is.
Okay. I read through the proposal that you had sent him, and I just have a little maybe tweaks or suggestions maybe that we could look at.
normally, traditionally, it's the class president that says the names of the student body. Is there any reason why that couldn't still continue since there will only be 3 of you on the stage? It's still under 10. As a suggestion, as long as the class president would be okay with and comfortable with it. I mean, is that like an absolute no, it has to be you, or? I'm just asking, because that's typically one of the things that's, I mean, I want to keep the graduation ceremony as close to what we can do as possible and what we normally have done. And I think that would be a small perk to keep that part of the ceremony. And then I know you said, I understand the tassel thing, totally get that, because it'd be 50 out of the car and mass gathering. So what would be the negative of having a second vehicle for the family to have there? If they're not getting out of their car, it's no different than going to a drive-in theater where nobody's getting out of their car. Why not have the allowing of 2 vehicles in attendance, but one of the vehicles has the graduate and they're up front with the parents. But the second vehicle can be in the back, maybe with some grandparents, or I'm just throwing it out there. If they never get out of the vehicle and we already are possibly going to have the sheriff there as a threat to obey never getting out of your vehicle, I don't, it sounded to me that the health department, that was their only issue, is if you get out, then it's considered a mass gathering. So if nobody gets out, then it's really not considered the mass gathering then. Possibly, but our parking lot has the capability of holding that many cars. I'm just.
And under the, Roger and I, with 50 some cars in the lot, we enabled a lot of room in between each of those cars.
So if I could, just as, and I am kind of partial to this because
I know.
So I'm trying to accommodate as many of the student seniors as I can in this unprecedented time. So just out of curiosity, if you were to line up where the stage is, and I know you said it'll be smaller, which is totally okay, but the first row back, which would be rows 19, 20, 21, which should be the second row past that. If you do every other space, that's plenty of room to go straight across with the valedictorians, salutatorians, and then the class officer, Ariel Kimmick, would be the 9th one, I believe, and then go the next row and it's every other. And then behind that would be, after all the graduates, then you have all the extra cars and you could have them monitored. And if it is only the graduate that gets out, we're still technically under the 10. Well, I'm just, listen, I'm a parent at the same time of trying to think about the whole ceremony and make it out of the box. And if we can accommodate it and still within the rules, why not at least try it? Is all I was suggesting.
Yeah, I'm definitely open for suggestions. That's why I sent this
I just
out to you
built
guys
off
in
of your
advance.
proposal, that's all I did.
Yep.
That's all.
Okay, anything else? We'll discuss it again later too. Roll call.
Mrs. Berry? Mr. Chapman? Mrs. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Von Dracek? Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve a stipend payment to Tim Nowry for mentoring a YSU student teacher when payment is received from YSU. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Berry? Mr. Chapman? Mrs. Stevens? Mrs. Von Dracek? Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried. Motion that the employment contract of kindergarten teacher Erica Cameron be suspended and the employee laid off in accordance with collective bargaining agreement and Ohio Revised Code 3319.17 due to the loss of enrollment and for financial reasons effective June 30th, 2020, and the treasurer issue the necessary notice to the employee of this act.
I'll make the motion.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Stevens? Mrs. Von Dracek? Mrs. Berry? Mr. Chapman? Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent, move to non-renew Kimberly Maskovig at the expiration of her current contract, and the treasurer be instructed to serve written notice of the intention to non-renew Ms. Maskovig's contract.
I'll make a motion.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Vondracek, Mrs. Stevens, Mrs. Berry, Mr. Chapman, Mr. Mickle,
Yes, motion carried. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent, move to non-renew Christy Kowalczyk at the expiration of her current long-term teaching contract, and the treasurer be instructed to serve written notice of the intention to non-renew Ms. Kowalczyk's contract. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Chapman, Mrs. Berry, Mrs. Stevens, Mrs. Vondracek, Mr. Mickle,
Yes, motion carried. Motion to employ Alec Ring at base step 0 of the teacher salary schedule with basic benefit recognition effective April 20th, 2020, in accordance with ORC 3319.10 requirements until the end of the current academic school year. Treasurer's action in accordance with this statute are ratified. Discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Stevens, Mrs. Berry, Mr. Chapman, Mrs. Vondracek, Mr. Mickle,
Yes, motion carried. Motion recommendation of the superintendent move to non-Alec Ring at expiration of his current long-term teaching contract, and the treasurer be instructed to serve written notice of intention to non-renew Mr. Ring's contract. Discussion?
Just, he did a very nice job this year. We appreciate everything he's done with that class.
Roll call.
Mr. Chapman, Mrs. Berry, Mrs. Stevens, Mrs. Vondracek, Mr. Mickle,
Yes, motion carried. Motion to accept the retirement resignation of Carolyn Settles effective May 31, 2020 at the end of the day.
I'll make a motion.
Any discussion?
I just want to say Carolyn turned in a very nice retirement letter. I told her we're going to have a very hard time replacing her with all of the things she does here, and I wish her well.
Roll call.
Mrs. Vondracek, Mrs. Stevens, Mrs. Berry, Mr. Chapman, Mr. Mickle,
Yes, motion carried. Motion to accept the retirement resignation of Paul Baker effective July 31, 2020 at the end of the day. Any discussion?
Again, thank you to Mr. Baker for the many years he's worked here with us.
Roll call.
Mr. Chapman, Mrs. Berry, Mrs. Stevens, Mrs. Vondracek, Mr. Mickle,
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve the following for a one-year contract for the 2020-2021 school year, provided they meet all state and local requirements. Tara Barnard, Student Services Guidance Secretary, Heather Pulaski, Bus Driver. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Berry, Mrs. Vondracek, Mr. Chapman, Mrs. Stevens, Mr. Mickle,
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve Tina Meyer for a continuing contract starting with the 2020-2021 school year, provided it meets all state and local requirements. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Stevens, Mr. Chapman, Mrs. Berry, Mrs. Vondracek, Mr. Mickle,
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve the following one-year certified contracts for the 2021 school year, provided they meet all state and local requirements. Daniel Call, Gina Farmentino, Lindsay Galt, Stephanie Gosnell, Susan Holman, Kimberly Capon, Dennis Holt, Denise Colaz, Leah Nicholas, Timothy Nowry, Chelsea Santiago, and Melissa Thomas. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Chapman, Mrs. Berry, Mrs. Stevens, Mrs. Vondracek, Mr. Mickle,
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve Dana Slenzoff for continuing contract of the 2020-2021 school year, provides it meets all state and local requirements, and pending the completion of 7 years teaching under the license. Discussion. Roll call.
Mrs. Berry, Mrs. Stevens, Mr. Chapman, Mrs. Von Dracy, Mr. Mickle,
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve the payment of the fiscal year 2020 spring supplementals at 100% of the contractual agreement as per the advice of legal counsel. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Von Dracy, Mr. Chapman, Mrs. Berry, Mrs. Stevens, Mr. Mickle,
Yes, motion carried. Motion to accept the following supplemental resignations at the conclusion of the 2019-2020 school year. Jill Mahan Church, 10th grade advisor. Carolyn Settles, English Festival High School, senior class advisor, yearbook advisor. Timothy Nowry, National Honor Society, and Aaron Weeby, assistant boys basketball.
I'll make the motion.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mrs. Stevens, Mrs. Berry, Mr. Chapman, Mrs. Von Dracy, Mr. Mickle,
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve the following athletic supplemental positions for the 2020-2021 school year, provided they meet all state and local requirements. And there they are.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
They were approved in January.
Roll call.
Mr. Chapman, Mrs. Stevens, Mrs. Berry, Mrs. Von Dracy, Mr. Mickle,
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve the following classified supplemental positions for the 2020-2021 school year, provided they meet all state and local requirements. Substitute callers, Candace Mansfield, Transportation, Melissa Moriarty, Elementary, and Deborah Rural High School. Shift coordinator, Lisa Wenzel, and head coach, Debbie Dale. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Von Dracy, Mr. Chapman, Mrs. Berry, Mrs. Stevens, Mr. Mickle,
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve the following curricular supplemental positions for the 2020-2021 school year, provided they meet all state and local requirements. And there they are. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Chapman, Mrs. Von Dracy, Mrs. Berry, Mrs. Stevens, Mr. Mickle,
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve the following supplemental positions for the 2020-2021 school year, provided they meet all state and local requirements. Chelsea Santiago, AM/PM detention. Linda Mendick, AM/PM detention. Leah Pacheck, AM/PM detention. Denise Colas, Saturday detention. Timothy Nowry, Saturday detention. Anthony Casone, Saturday detention, and Emily Woodford, Saturday detention.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Berry, Mrs. Stevens, Mr. Chapman, Mrs. Von Dracy, Mr. Mickle,
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve a contract with Trumbull County Educational Service Center for special education services for fiscal year 2021 in the amount of $525,730. Any discussion?
Yeah, this was the amount we just approved in January for the remainder of the school year. So they set the same amount as for next year as of this year. Yeah, so I think they started the last couple of years, like mid-year, they look at where our expenditures are at, what kids are enrolled, and then we can make an adjustment. Like we've done that the last couple of years.
Roll call.
Mr. Chapman, Mrs. Von Dracy, Mrs. Berry, Mrs. Stevens, Mr. Mickle,
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve the removal of the attached list of obsolete books at no salvage value, exhibit 2020-05. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Von Dracy, Mrs. Berry, Mr. Chapman? Mrs. Stevens? Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve the purchase of a 72 passenger bus from Myers Equipment Corporation at an approximate cost of $87,035, including options and minus trade-in cost. Any discussion?
We did this bid with Ohio School Boards Association, and I thought the process was much better. I kind of felt like I had a guide the whole way through it. And anyways, I'm happy with the bus that we're getting. And, you know, again, it kind of keeps our fleet young. So
We're also trading in 2 buses. So our fleet will go down from 10 to 9.
Roll call.
Mr. Chapman? Mrs. Stevens? Mrs. Berry? Mrs. Von Dracek? Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve membership in the Ohio High School Athletic Association for the 2020-2021 school year. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Berry? Mrs. Von Dracek? Mr. Chapman? Mrs. Stevens? Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve pay to participate for the 2020-2021 school year at $100 for high school sport and $75 for junior high sport, not to exceed $300 per family.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll.
Mr. Chapman?
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens? Mrs. Berry? Mrs. Von Dracek? Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve an agency agreement with the Bristol Adult Athletic Boosters to collect pay to participate fees for the 2020-2021 school year. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Berry? Mrs. Von Dracek? Mr. Chapman?
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens? Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried. Motion to approve the kindergarten field trip for Cranex in Hermitage, PA that took place on March 12, 2020. Any discussion?
yeah, this was kind of a last minute change, and it was right leading up to, you know, before we ended up canceling everything. We kind of didn't have all the, you know, I don't think anybody had all the information at the time, but we had a field trip scheduled and they had to adjust it to theirs. So
Roll call.
Mrs. Berry? Mr. Chapman?
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens? Mrs. Von Dracek? Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried. Motion to cancel the 6th grade Washington DC trip that was going to take place on May 13th, 14th, 15th, 2020. The Washington DC trip for the 2020-2021 school year will be both the 6th grade and the 7th grade class.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Any money that the parents is that gonna just carry over for when their 7th grader then goes? You got the, so you'll just have to repay it again.
This is Donatelli issued refunds for all parents.
Roll call.
Mrs. Stevens?
Yeah.
Mr. Chapman?
Yes.
Mrs. Berry? Mrs. Von Dracek? Mr. Mickle?
Yeah, motion carried. I didn't go up food on this, right?
No, this was my last.
Oh. Motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between the Bristol Local School District Board of Education and the Bristol Association of School Employees, exhibit 2020-06.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Von Dracek?
Yes.
Mrs. Berry? Mr. Chapman?
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens?
Yeah.
Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried. Motion to hire Craig Geezy as high school technology teacher and a step 10 for the 2020-2021 school year, provided he meets all state and local requirements. Discussion.
this was a hard position to hire. Um, Mr. Russo was a technology teacher and industrial tech, so the wood shop. My desire was to go straight technology. I thought it was valuable to our students. I anticipated having a broad array of people to choose from, and didn't have as many resumes as I thought I would have, which isn't taking away from the person we hired. I thought Craig Geezy, his resume was excellent. His teaching at Newton Falls was phenomenal. I heard great things from Trumbull County Educational Service Center on Craig as a teacher. I already know Craig as a coach. He's a fantastic coach. He graduated from Bristol, puts in a lot of time here with our kids. I think we're fortunate now to have him not only still coaching our kids in basketball, but now in the classroom. Craig's super excited to be on board. He's already got some great ideas that I think are going to really fundamentally change that whole department. He's looking at doing broadcasting, some digital video. He's actually potentially going to take over the yearbook and have the yearbook be part of that technology department as well too. So I'm really excited to have Craig on board.
Roll call.
Mrs. Stevens? Mr. Chapman? Yes. Mrs. Berry? Yes. Mrs. Von Dracek? Yes. Mr. Mickle?
Yes, motion carried. Motion to accept a donation from Target Flooring to provide Bristol local schools a weight room, a contribution of a multi-purpose flooring, including custom logo, at an estimated value of $11,462. Any discussion? I think this is Leon Thorpe, I think works for them, doesn't he? And I think he set this up somehow, which is a great thing.
I think Craig and Dan have been in contact with them. I know Dan's been in contact with Roger about they move the equipment out and then they're working with companies to come in and kind of implement it and all that stuff. Install it.
They've done other local schools like Cardinals. They did their whole weight room also. No, that's where the idea comes from. Leon was, so.
We already voted on it. Roll call.
Mr. Chapman? Yes. Mrs. Berry? Yes. Mrs. Stevens? Mrs. Von Dracek?
Yes.
Mr. Mickle?
Yeah, motion carried. I know the motion adjourned to executive session to discuss possibly personnel, perhaps graduation. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Von Dracek?
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Berry?
Yes.
Mr. Chapman? Yes. Mr. Mickle?
Yeah, motion carried. How do we get out of here?
We'll just mute, then we'll just go into another room.
Oh, we can't mute. Ted's got to mute us.
I think it was just library. Or do you guys want to? Yeah, we have to get back on and close the meeting.
Just to close the meeting.
Just to close the meeting. Ted, are you still there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
How many views did we get on YouTube? Are you able to see?
6.
6?
Yes. No comments.
Okay, I need to be unmuted.
I think everybody's there. Okay.
Nope, I'm not in yet. Nope.
Okay, need a motion. I'm out of executive session.
No, we just came out, I wrote it down. Just need a motion to adjourn.
Just need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, Ted. Ted,
Yes.
hey, the next board meeting, if you can come in case you have any issues. Is that a problem?
No, huh?
Okay. And next meeting is scheduled June 10th. Thanks, Ted.
How do I shut it off?
Just hit leave. Just leave.